Mr. Speaker, the war in Ukraine is entering a critical stage. Freedom must win out over tyranny, and Putin's aggression must fail. As the Ukrainians continue to defend themselves and prepare for an offensive to push Putin's forces out, it is crucial they know the nations of the G7 continue to support their fight without waver. We will stand with them for as long as it takes. We will stand with them because their decisive victory is the route to a comprehensive, just and lasting peace. Therefore, Labour welcomes the strong show of support for President Zelensky. We welcome the decision by our partners on F-16 fighter jets. We also welcome restrictions on exports that aid the Russian war machine. And we welcome the tightening of the vice on the mineral trade that is funding Putin's aggression. I would urge the Prime Minister to prescribe the Wagner Group as terrorists and to ensure Britain's sanctions are not just in place, but enforced. No one has been fined for breaching sanctions since the war began. Mr. Speaker, as I told President Zelensky when I met him in Kyiv, whichever party is in power in the UK, there will be no let-up in Britain's resolve. We will continue to support Ukraine's military and its people in their quest for freedom, for peace and for justice. And when their moment of victory comes, we will be there to help them rebuild from the rubble of war. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that when it comes to Ukraine, it is important that we continue to show that we are united across this House? Mr. Speaker, I also welcome the commitment to de-risk our economic relationship with China. It is in our national interest to engage with China. They will be crucial global partners in the effort to reach net zero, and we have a trading relationship worth £100 billion. But that pursuit should never come at the cost of economic security, and we should never leave ourselves vulnerable to economic coercion. We must be clear-eyed about the facts. China is increasingly aggressive in the Pacific. They show disdain for democratic values and human rights, and they are seeking to exploit economic leverage. A decade of ignoring these facts and Tory governments cosing up to Beijing have gifted the Chinese Communist Party a stake in Britain's key infrastructure. We need to change tack, and Labour is willing to work with the government on this. It is time for a full audit of UK-China relations and to work more consistently with our allies to develop a long-term plan for Western engagement and a long-term plan for economic security. Because, as this winter has shown us, in the modern world, economic security is national security. As the world races to invest in new technologies and to make their supply chains more robust, we must make sure British businesses can take advantage. The Prime Minister has rightly pointed out the importance of the semiconductor industry. They are the brains of our electronic devices, indispensable components of cutting-edge manufacturing. The US and the EU have big plans to grow and nurture their sectors, to remove any vulnerabilities from their supply chains. Now, we've waited a long time for the UK to present its strategy. It finally arrived last week, and an industry leader described it as, frankly, flaccid. Does that worry the Prime Minister as much as it worries me? Whilst others build resilience and seize opportunities, this government seems content with managed decline. And this isn't the only area where I fear we're being left behind. The US and the EU used the G7 to continue important talks that would allow European companies to share in billions of dollars of US tax incentives for electric vehicles and green technologies, and vice versa. Last week, we saw warnings about the future of the UK car industry. People who work in the sector are very worried. They want leadership. So can the Prime Minister confirm his government will secure the same or better access for British manufacturers, and when can we expect to hear progress on this? When the Inflation Reduction Act was passed, the government's response wasn't to outline what opportunities this offered to Britain. It was to say it was dangerous and to suggest that an active industrial strategy is somehow not the British way. Wake up. It's not the 1980s anymore. A race is on. We need to be in it, and we need to win our share of the jobs of the future. We can't afford to be stuck in the changing rooms complaining about how unfair life is. Mr. Speaker, as the war in Europe continues to rage, Hiroshima was a fitting stage for the G7 summit. A city which has seen unimaginable horrors has risen from its past. It can serve as an inspiration for those in Ukraine who fight daily for their freedom. Their future can be bright. From Ukraine to China to climate change, today's challenges are big, but if we stay united with our allies and partners, if we work together, they are not insurmountable. And if we're focused, if we have a plan, the economic opportunities of the future are bigger still. Britain must seize them with both hands, and our future can be bright too.